Beast of Bladenboro. The story begins in Bladen County in the town of Clarkton. On December 29th, 1953, a local woman heard her neighbor's dog barking and whimpering. When she went out to investigate, she saw a large cat-like creature skulk off into the darkness. That was the first sighting of the Beast of Bladenboro. 2 days later, the creature would strike again. On New Year's Eve, Bladenboro Police Chief Roy Fors called out to the farm of Woody Storm. 2 of Storm's dogs had been killed by something large and powerful. The poor dogs' bodies had been completely drained of blood. More reports started coming in. DG Pate said he watched from his service station as a dog was attacked by a large creature and dragged into the woods. Chief Fors was inundated with reports of dogs being attacked from across the county. People said they saw an animal like a bear or panther that was 3 feet long, 20 inches high, with a long tail and a cat's face. Others reported hearing the creature's scream coming across a swamp that was near the town, saying it sounded like a woman with a knife being stuck in her back. On January 1st, the bodies of 2 more dogs were discovered. These 2 had been drained of blood. Chief Fors decided it was time to call for help. A team of professional hunters were brought in to track down the animal. Chief Fors accompanied the tracking party and said that he saw footprints the size of a silver dollar. Then, on January 5th, the beast attacked a human. That evening, Mrs. C.E. Kinslaw heard the sound of a whimpering dog outside her house. She went out to investigate. She saw a large, cat-like creature running towards her. Mrs. Kingslaw screamed and her husband rushed outside. The beast was frightened off and fled back into the woods. Newspapers picked up the story, and soon the Bladenboro was overwhelmed with a flurry of hunters coming in, eager to bag the beast. Over 600 men from as far away as Tennessee descended on the town. A fully armed pack of brothers from UNC Chapel Hill made its way down to the town to see about putting the beast's head on their wall. But nobody knew exactly what they were hunting. Speculation began to run rampant. Some thought it was a Carolina panther, a large species of cat that had lived in the area until the early 20th century and was thought to be extinct. Others said that they were dealing with a coyote or a stray dog. Most of those who had descended onto Bladen County thought that the only way to find out for sure what the beast was by killing it. The town was terrified. Eve Butler, who was a young man in Bladenboro at the time, recalled nighttime was the feared time around these parts. As the sun set, the entire community on the west side of town went indoors and did not come out unless necessary. The fear of the beast had a very real effect on Mr. Butler and his family. We didn't live in the town's limits at the time, and almost everyone had an outdoor bathroom. To supplement the outside convenience, most houses had a thunder jug, a big jug that could be used at night and emptied into the outhouse during the day. That jug got plenty of use during the scare. Deciding that things were getting too dangerous, the mayor, Bob Fussell, and Chief Fors called an end to this hunt. On January 13th, taking an unusually large bobcat that had been trapped by a local farmer, 2 men hung it up a flagpole in the center of town. They posted a sign underneath stating that This was the Beast of Boldenborough. After a week or two, things settled and went back to normal. The hunters left town and the reports of killing stopped coming in. Whatever the beast was, it had vanished back into the night and to the swamps, to where it had first emerged. Brown Mountain Lights. Brown Mountain is a low ridge in Burke County that, during dry, crisp evenings in the autumn, is host to a genuine and baffling mystery. When conditions are right, mysterious glowing orbs can be seen to rise up off the mountains, hover and wobble about 15 feet up in the air, and then disappear. There's no denying that the lights are real. They have been observed by countless witnesses and photographed on many occasions. But what they are is still completely unknown. The Brown Mountain Lights have been observed for centuries, and multiple legends have arisen around the phenomena. The Cherokee were aware of the lights, and according to some accounts claimed that the lights were the souls of the Cherokee women searching for their men who had died in a great battle between the Cherokee and the Catawba that took place on the Brown Mountain. Another legend says that the lights are the ghostly echoes of lights that appeared during a search for a murdered woman in the 19th century. For the lights themselves, many different possible scientific explanations had been offered, from swamp gas all the way to reflections of automobile headlights from the valley below. But every explanation offered up so far seems to be too easily disproved. The lights have been observed since before automobiles even existed, so headlights are an unsatisfactory explanation. And the lights that were observed during the 1916 flood that shut down all automobile and railway traffic in the valley below. The swamp gas theory seems to be bed-crippled somewhat by the distinct absence of a swamp on Brown Mountain. Some have theorized that the lights may be a naturally occurring electrical discharge caused by the slow movement of the geological fault line below the mountain. Whatever the cause, people still flock to see the Brown Mountain Lights, but spotting them is never guaranteed. Reportedly, the best chance to see the lights come on is a dry, clear night in October or November, after all the leaves are off the trees. Where are you, my son? A long time ago, back deep in the piney woods where the Nueces River empties into the Pamlico Sound, there was an old shack where an old woman lived with her son. The old woman was blind and she depended upon her son for everything. The two of them made their living gathering what they could from the waters. Every day the son would go out and throw his nets into the briny river water and pull up fish and shrimp and crabs. He would pull clams from the mud. He would gather berries from the wood and snare rabbits in his traps. This way they kept themselves fed and happy. The old woman hardly ever walked much further than the front door of their shack. She guided herself around with a long old stick, which she would use to tap the ground. And whenever she needed anything, she would say in her soft, creaky voice, "Where are you, my son?" No matter how softly she spoke or how far away the boy was, he would always seem to hear her and come to her side. The old woman needed water drawn from the well. She spoke the words, "Where are you, my son?" So the boy would come and there would be a bucket in his hand. If the old woman needed more logs on the fire, she would say in her creaky voice, "Where are you, my son?" And the boy would be there tending the flames. If the old woman was lonely and wanted her son's hand, all she would have to say was, "Where are you, my son?" And he would be there holding her hand. But one day, after the boy had left to go down to the riverside, the old woman called out, and he did not come. It had been raining hard all week, and the water was high and flowing rough and fast. The wind was high, and even the waves on the river waters were topped with white caps. When the boy walked down to the riverside, the soft banks gave way under his feet. He fell into the river. He was drawn into the current and swept out into the sound, and he was never seen again. The old woman waited by the cabin, saying, "Where are you, my son?" time and time again, but the boy did not come. So the blind woman picked up her stick and went out to look for her lost boy. She tapped her long stick on the ground in front of her and walked into the rain, calling in her creaky voice, "Where are you, my son? Where are you, my son?" time and time again. Some men found her body a few weeks later, lying not too far from the river. No one knows if she had gotten lost and couldn't find her way back home, or if she had just fallen into despair and died when her son never answered her cries. The woman was buried, and the shack where she and her son lived was long forgotten and swallowed into the forest. That the two of them had never lived there would have been forgotten, except that the town around where the old house was, the people who lived there kept hearing a creaky voice on the wind calling out, "Where are you, my son?" And sometimes at night they would hear a tapping on their floors and feel a hand shaking the foot of their bed and a creaky old voice saying, "Where are you, my son?" George Feller. In the 1870s, there was a farmer by the name of George Feller who lived in MacLeod County with his wife Kathy. During this time, farming was a prime source of income for families in the region. George's wife suffered chronic asthma, preventing her from helping him on the farm. So George was left to do things on his own as his wife's condition worsened. One night, a frantic George appeared at the neighbor's door sobbing and asking for help. He said that his wife had a violent bout of asthma, and that the closest doctor being miles away, he needed immediate help. When the neighbors arrived, they found Kathy dead, with her infant son curled next to her body. In typical mountain fashion, the town banded together for help, as all the funeral arrangements were made and finalized. On the day of the funeral, in tradition, a group of mourners walked behind the wagon carrying the coffin for a 4-mile journey. As they traveled, they suddenly encountered a man on horseback who refused to let them pass. He told the mourners, "You cannot bury this woman, she had been murdered." As the crowd stood in shock, the man continued, "I don't know any of you. I live in Yancey County, but I had a dream last night that on my way into McDonald County, I would meet the funeral procession of a woman who was killed by her husband. This is the party I saw in my dream. The same carriage, the same coffin. Unless you have an examination made, you leave me no choice but to tell you the law." Everyone stood in disbelief. While some thought it was silly, others could not argue with the fact that somehow this stranger knew it was in fact a young woman's body in that coffin. Despite the objections by George Feller, they agreed it was the right thing to do, to have the body examined. Upon examination, the doctors had found that Kathy did in fact die from pressure applied to the outside of the body, not her condition. Kathy was actually murdered, and after this striking discovery, it did not take long for George to admit that he and Kathy had a terrible fight that night. That he did in fact murder his own wife in a rage by strangling her with a leather strap. After his confession, George was hanged. Helen's Bridge. Located in Asheville, North Carolina, Zealandia Bridge, also known as Helen's Bridge, has been talked about throughout history in lots of media, and the story passed down through generations. The bridge, which is made of stone, was constructed in 1909 as a carriageway to and from the Zealandia estate, and was designed by R.S. Smith, who also worked on the close by and ever-famous Baltimore estate. In 1998, the demolition of the bridge was considered when pieces of the stone began to drop, but it was saved, and the beautiful structure still stands today as a reminder of one of North Carolina's most popular ghost stories. Writer Thomas Wolfe himself walked under the bridge many times as a boy, and the bridge is mentioned in his work, Look Homeward, Angel. Despite its beauty, the bridge is most famous for the dark story surrounding it. The story is of a young woman named Helen who lived nearby with her daughter. The legend has it that after losing her daughter in a fire, Helen hung herself from the bridge. To this day, she is said to appear to motorists passing under the bridge, and to some who visit the bridge looking for a good scare. But there is more to the story. Helen is said to wander the land around the bridge, wearing a long, flowing gown, asking passerbys if they had seen her daughter. It is also reported that motorists sometimes experience car troubles at the bridge. The story actually has many versions. One links Helen to Zealandia and says that her daughter actually died in a fire that happened there. Another version of the story actually claims that Helen was a mistress of the castle's owner, John Evans Brown, from Pennsylvania. Brown made his fortune raising sheep in New Zealand, and that's how the castle got its name. This version of the legend claims that Helen hung herself from the bridge when she found out that she was pregnant with his child. Whichever legend you choose to believe, it is still a heartbreaking story of a mother who lost her child and still wanders, looking for her today. If you ever have the pleasure of visiting Helen's Bridge, be sure you listen for a lonely lady searching for her beloved daughter. I hope you ghouls enjoyed these North Carolina urban legends. I love these urban legend videos. They're so interesting. I really do enjoy the research. And yeah, I like them, even though they don't get that many views. Nothing does anymore, because fuck you, YouTube. That's why. But yeah, I really like these. I like the bridge. Do any of you live near Helen's Bridge? Have you seen it? Have you went to it? Is it creepy? I'm curious. I really like spooky bridges. And Helen's Bridge sounds creepy, but also pretty? You know what I mean? I like old things. So I think that it would be really pretty to see in person anyway. And also that story with that guy George who like murdered his wife and like covered it up. That's so weird. Is that like an urban legend that's told around in North Carolina? I don't know. I just found it while I was looking for them and I had to put it in. So just let me know. But yeah, ghouls, as always, my next video will be on the top left. My last video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen, as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.